Hi guys, it's Joe here from Rufioh. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard. You should definitely hit subscribe before you go any further and realise that this is absolute fucking garbage. If this is not your first time on the channel, welcome back. You've probably hit subscribe already, in which case, you're a little fucking raccoon, you love just getting the absolute trash out in the open. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at Trickstar Numeron, two combinations of things that people absolutely love to hate. Trickstars and Numeron. The good thing with both parts of these is that they are both very small engines that do slightly different things, and in that case, they work quite well together, better than you might expect. So give it a go. It's certainly not the most competitive strategy in the world, but it can be a lot of fun just locking your opponent out, being able to play, burning them to death, and the fact is that the Trickstar engine is still very, very good. Of course, missing the light stages can be a bit of an issue, but it does work relatively well. If you are watching this video and you're inspired to pick up any of the cards, you should check out the channel sponsors, Jam Cards UK. There is a link in the description for a discount on their eBay store, courtesy of yours truly. But that's enough waffling on from me. Let's get stuck right into the deck profile. So let me first apologise in advance if you can hear any loud noises in the background. My laptop is very fucking loud. It's one of them cool gaming laptops, I guess you could say, and it chucks out a ton of heat, a ton of fucking sound when those fans are just going absolutely mental. So if you do hear that in the background, my apologies. But that's enough waffling on from me. Let's get stuck in to the deck profile. So we're going to start off with our Trickstar engine. I think most of this is pretty self-explanatory for anyone that has played the Trickstar deck or any variants before. You're playing one copy of Korobane, you just need it for a special summon. There are some added benefits that you can come up with this, but mostly that's what we want it for. We've got triple copies of Candina. This is like your best starter card, really. This gets you to search everything that you need. You want to resolve it as much as possible. This is going to be your primary hand trap target. People are going to nail the fuck out of this card as much as they possibly can. We then have triple copies of Licorice. This motherfucker, this allows you to dodge a lot of hand traps and things like that by being able to bounce cards. It allows you to push for damage. It allows you to burn your opponent when you're resolving your trap card, all of that kind of good stuff. This is just a really important card for the engine. I think so far, engine size-wise, this is pretty much perfect. And then we round off with one copy of Lilybell. This is all you need. Some people play multiples. That's just stupid. You only need the one. It's going to allow you, again, to push for damage. It's going to allow you to loop cards and attack for more damage. This is a really important part of your battle phase. We then have triple copies of Numeron Wall. This is going to allow you to get into your field spell as quickly as possible and to resolve your combo. Of course, you want to be able to lock your opponent out of being able to play. But if you're forced to go second and they don't have any interrupts, this can give you a good way to get a big body on board to push for some more damage. It does also double up as a way of protecting you because it can prevent you from taking further battle damage, all that kind of good stuff. So it does have added benefits outside of just searching the field spell. We then move on to our hand traps, and I think that, again, most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Some of them you could change and chop up depending on what you want. Some people might prefer to play Gamma and Driver. At the moment, I'm not playing it in this particular build, but we do start off with triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Again, I think that this is pretty self-explanatory. Best hand trap, or the most diverse hand trap, I should say, in the game. It's good in every single format. It's very rare that this is ever not usable. So for the most part, this is something you want to include in your main deck at all times. We then have triple copies of Nibiru. If you're forced to go second or you find your opponent has gone second and they're comboing off like crazy, this can add a layer of protection. Getting everything into the grave is really not an issue. Just clearing up your opponent's board and then being able to start developing your strategy again. The Trickstar engine is pretty consistent. Of course, it has lost some consistency with the way things have been hit. But the advantage of that means that you can tear apart the entire board and start all over again and start regenerating those resources, usually much faster than your opponent can. We then have 2 copies of Effect Veiler and 2 copies of Ghost Bell. Effect Veiler is just, again, all-round usually pretty good. Again, you can omit this for something else if you prefer. Some people might prefer to play Droll in here, so you can do the lock combo. That's entirely up to you. I haven't included it in this particular variant. Ghost Bell is just really strong at the moment. It handles so many different cards. It's really important to have in your deck, especially if you're going to be playing against other meta matchups. So I think having 2 copies in here is just fine. We then move on. We've got Trickstar Light Stage here. Unfortunately, at 1, this could quite easily come back to 3 and make the deck playable again, but not absolutely fucking crazy. I think that they should bring it back to 3, but that's just my opinion. 1 copy of Light Stage, really important again for any Trickstar deck. It is a starter card. It does so much like switching off back row. It does additional burn, does all that good stuff. We have 1 copy of Set Rotation because we're playing multiple field spells in here, so it gives you quicker access to whichever one you need at any given time. We're playing a single copy of 1 for 1. This does allow you to use Numeron at wall straight out of the deck if you need another way to get into it. Something that a lot of people overlook. It's a really cool card. Again, you can omit it if you don't feel the necessary to have it in here, but I quite like it as an option. Terraforming because we're playing multiple field spells, and even if you were playing one single one, you should probably run this card in most instances anyway. We have a single copy of Call by the Grave. Call by the Grave is a power spell. It should really be at 3 on the list, but that's a debate for another day. I do think, though, that whilst it's available, even at 1, you should definitely be taking advantage of it. It doesn't necessarily hit everything, but there are a lot of decks where it can hit key combo pieces that can set you up. It gives you another form of interrupt, and it can also be defensive on your own turn. We're then playing the Numeron package. Of course, you need Calling, you need the field spell. This is your main way of getting into your major combo, the way to lock your opponent out, or of course going into Infinitrack if you want to push for some damage. A lot of decks can't deal with either of those scenarios, so it'll give you time to get into them. And again, I think that these ratios work out quite nicely. Calling is dead, especially if you see them later on in the game, but seeing them quite early is what you need. And Network at 3 is pretty much perfect. Now, I've opted to go for Memories of Hope here. Some people will disagree with this. There are other options that you can consider. I quite like the fact that this gives you the ability to draw 4 fucking cards, which is pretty insane, especially if you open it. We are running a nice trim 40 card deck, so there's a good chance that you see this in your opening hand. And if you do and you see it in a way to get into your Numeron plays, this is going to allow you to draw 4 cards, which in a deck like this is absolutely fucking bonkers. We're running triple copies of Reincarnation. This card, I'm surprised, never got hit on the list. This would have been the one that I thought that would get hit. Again, you can combo this with Droll and Lockbird if you want to. I've not included it in here. I don't feel the need to, but it is a good option to have out there. Reincarnation, though, is just a very strong card. You know, your opponent adds key combo pieces. You can just mulligan their entire hand. The important thing to note, though, is that it can cause you some issues, especially if your opponent has a shit hand and then they draw it into good cards. So just be very careful about when you use this. On the plus side, though, it does also give you some recursion of your monsters, being able to get your plays going again. Like I say, if you wipe out the field with Nibiru and you've got this engrave, this is a way to get your plays started again. And we round off on triple copies of Impermanence. This is one of the more expensive cards in the main deck, although it has multiple prints now. If you did want to omit this, you could just run other hand traps instead. An additional copy of Veiler, Ghost Spell. You could run the Drolls instead if you prefer. I quite like Infinite Impermanence, so it gives you a lot of options to play with. And then we move on to the extra deck. I have omitted the side deck here again because I think that it just depends on what kind of tournament you're playing in, whether it's at locals, whether it's a remote duel, whether it's an unofficial online sim, any of that kind of good stuff, you are going to set up slightly differently according to what you have. So we're going to skip that part and we're going to head straight on to the extra deck. So we've got the standard Numeron package in here, 1, 2, 2, and 2. You only need the 4th one if you're going to go all 4 cards in, which doesn't come up too much unless you're going into like Infinitrack and stuff like that. So I think 1, 2, 2, and 2 works perfectly. I have included the Chaos Gate in here because there are niche scenarios where this comes up, and when it does it can be incredibly powerful. Sometimes it's really overlooked, but I think it's a really cool option to have in here. We then have Zexal because the Zexal lock is fucking broken. Some people like to play a second copy of this, just so that they've got a way to resolve it again later on in the game if they need to. I think 1 is perfectly fine for this build. I think if you're playing something different, you might want to consider that option. But I think 1 is perfectly okay in here. We then move on to our links. So we've got 1 copy of Holy Angel. I think 1 copy of Holy Angel is fine. Again, you could play other additional copies, or you can play other Trickstar cards. I personally just think 1 copy of this is perfectly fine. You're not going to use it all that often unless you're pushing for a really big burn or you're trying to push down that route. I think that 1 is absolutely okay as is. We then have IP Masquerader, so when you go in first, you can set up interrupts and that kind of thing, which will allow you to go into utility cards such as Nightmare Phoenix, such as Nightmare Unicorn, that are going to enable you to pop back row, to spin cards in the field, that kind of good stuff. Just really important for first turn plays, especially if you don't see your Numeron engine. Now, last 2 cards in the extra deck, we have Infinitrack Mega Collapse. This card is insane. A lot of people don't have an inbuilt way to deal with this, so having this as an option in the extra deck is a really nice touch. Some decks just cannot deal with it. If you get it on board, they have no way to out it at all. And then our last and final card for the deck profile, Access Code Talker. You have a number of options here to pop cards. This is kind of Powercraft Borrelsword. If you wanted to, again, save some money, go for a cheaper option, that is one you could go for. It is worth noting, though, that although this doesn't put out quite as much damage as Borrelsword does, this does destroy cards in the field, which can be really important for breaking down the board. And that is all for today's video. By virtue of the fact that you made it this far, hopefully you have enjoyed it enough to have hit subscribe, or at least hated it enough not to have been able to look away. Do let me know down in the comments what you think of the video. I would really appreciate your feedback. I would love to hear your thoughts on the deck, and if you've tried it out, let me know if you've had any success. If there is any other kind of content you'd like to see me do on the channel, do let me know. I don't just do deck profiles, I do how to play videos, sometimes combo tutorials, all that good stuff. And a lot of the time, I do these locals vlogs when they're allowed, and we do this absolute fucking crazy nonsense. But that's enough waffling on from me. Thank you very much for coming along, guys. Hopefully, you've already hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. This content is brought to you in association with my buddies over at Jam Jam Cards UK. You can find the links to the eBay store and the Facebook page in the description.